So, as I've just mentioned, Pfizer admitted in the European Parliament this week that the vaccine was never tested for transmission before the rollout, thus undermining the have the vaccine to not kill granny argument. Joining me to discuss this is Laura Dodsworth, author of A State of Fear. Laura, thank you for joining me today. First of all, can you tell us what Pfizer said about their jab when it was first approved? Did they ever actually say that it stopped transmission?
Well, you'll find in black and white, it didn't say that. It didn't say that in the trial data that was reported in BMJ. I mean, this is down in black and white in official documents. They never said it stopped transmission because they didn't test that. However, I think that we're in the gaslighting stage of the pandemic, where, you have people saying, well, hang on, Pfizer never said it stopped transmission. But we all know that the very premise of mandates and passports was that it was that you weren't supposed to infect other people because it did interrupt transmission. And we were told that outright by world leaders, by people in public health, by news journalists. So I think we're in a really uncomfortable gaslighting stage. But, I'd really like to pull back from whether the vaccine stopped transmission or not, because I think you made some really fantastic points in your opening there. That was strong stuff. The fact is that people were told to have the vaccine whether they wanted it or not. There's a quote that I come back to, and I really understood in these times, and it's by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who went to the Gulag in Soviet Russia, and he wrote the Gulag Archipelago. And he said that the line separating good and evil doesn't run through states or classes or politics. It runs through every human heart, through all human hearts. And I think that in some of the reactions to the unvaccinated, we saw that. They were scapegoated. There was a microscopic focus, a cruel focus on the unvaccinated. And in the war on COVID, what we did was to make a casualty of individual conscience. We had religious leaders like Justin Welby, as you pointed out, but also the Pope and also others exhorting people to have the vaccine. Now, in this country, religious belief is a protected characteristic, but I'd go further. I'd just say it's a mark of a civilized society that you should respect people's faith and their individual conscience. And people had reasons of conscience not to be vaccinated.
And of course, you've been proven right because you were campaigning on this since the beginning, Laura. You even persuaded people like me to see it from a different perspective. But it's not a I told you so. I'm assuming it's not a I told you so you're happy to make, is it?
No, I think it's actually been really sad to see how easily people will deploy human psychology against each other, effectively social conformity and informational conformity. I mean, there were some truly horrific headlines and comments about the unvaccinated. For instance, Anne McElvoy said, the unvaccinated have become a lethal liability we can ill afford. Piers Morgan said, those who refuse to be vaccinated with no medical reason not to should be refused NHS care if they catch COVID. Sajid Javid said, get a job or get a new job to 40,000 care workers, which I find a very cruel and sneering way to speak to people who do such an important job in service to people. Karen Brady said, make the unjabbed face their own lockdown so we can live our lives. Andrew Neil said, it's time to punish Britain's 5 million vaccine refuseniks. I mean, I think we truly did only just swerve terrible times when the population was being encouraged to turn on the unvaccinated. Now, we shouldn't even need to discuss people's reasons not to be vaccinated because it's no one's business. It's private, personal medical decision. But, they might have had COVID before and have prior immunity. They might have special clinical conditions that mean that their risk-benefit analysis is different. They may, in the terms of individual conscience we mentioned, they may feel they can't take any vaccine that was researched and developed using cells from aborted fetuses. And that's how most of the COVID vaccines, possibly all of them actually, were developed. So a church leader could say...
Laura, I want to pull you up on it, but just before I do, this is wider than just politicians, wasn't it? I remember Adele banned the unjabbed from her concerts, so it was a societal problem, wasn't it? But I do want to push on, you mentioned the cells, you mentioned the cell research in the jabs. Now, I remember pretty much all of the vaccine providers coming out saying there was no aborted cells in their vaccinations. Is that entirely true?
Yes, there shouldn't. Well, no one's allowed to analyse the vaccines except the vaccine manufacturers. But if they say that, then yes, it should be true. There wouldn't be cells of aborted fetuses in vaccines. But in the research and development process. They use replicated cell lines from aborted fetuses. They're old, they're decades old. And, the church, the Catholic Church, Islam, lots of religions say that they're satisfied that in the balance that they're okay with that. But, the Catholic Church, for instance, provides very well for matters of individual conscience. I know a number of people that didn't want to have the vaccine for that reason. And I think that should have been respected. But that's only one of a multitude of reasons that shouldn't ever need to be aired publicly, to be frank.
Absolutely.